So, hello everybody to my People Talk, Schwarzwälder and Butterkuchen, which is actually a German talk, but today we have a special edition. We have an English talk because my guest is from America. And I'm really happy to talk to Professor Sabrina Thomoas. We met, I guess, 3 years ago or 2 years ago here in Germany, and we were still in contact. And well, she is an educator. She is a critical thinker, which I think is really necessary nowadays. She is a researcher and a storyteller, and she is an author. She wrote a book 2021, and it's called Scars of War. And of course, I will link the book or put the link in the show notes so that you all can have a look and perhaps also buy that book. And now I would like to say hello, dear Sabrina. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm fine too. And well, it's evening here. It's morning at your time, right?
Yep.
And yeah, we were in contact, and I would really like to talk with you and to you about the topic African American life. And I know there is not something like the African American life. But when I think back, when I was young, when I was a kid, when I was a young girl, I watched a TV series and the Huxtables. And I always thought, the Huxtables, this family is the typical African American family. A very successful father, a very successful mother, and I think four lovely kids. Very different kids, very individual, but lovely. So, but I learned, of course, that this is not the typical African American family. Oh, what is your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I also grew up watching The Cosby Show. Also, being kind of enamored by their successes and their trials and tribulations. It was one of my most favorite shows as a kid. So for me, growing up in the United States, it was an opportunity to see Black success in a way that you didn't often see on television. That was one of the first shows that showed a middle-class African-American family. Doctor, he was a doctor, she was a lawyer.
Yes.
The kids all went to college. They went to historically Black colleges, the ones who did. And there was the spinoff that was the Black college show also, which was A Different World, which came after, which also continued this image of Black success. I think that was why that show was so important for not just white Americans, but Black Americans to see that kind of success, because it was not normally showed on television. Normally, what you would see for many years, even after that, was Black people on TV were criminals or were poor. And so it gave a really good symbol of what Black achievement could look like and what Black success could look like for those folks who didn't see that in their daily lives. So I agree with you. Like I love that show, and I knew that that was something that I could aspire to, just like I think a lot of African American children saw that in the same way. It was why it was so important. I think in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s, when that show was popular, the daily experience of African Americans broadly did not meet that standard, but because it did set a standard at a time where things were starting to shift, where college access was more available to Black students, where there was more conversation about the ways that racial inequality crept into curriculum in public schools, that it was an opportunity for folks to see that there could be more, right? And so I think The Cosby Show actually did a lot in the United States to help shift the idea among, again, broadly African Americans to say, well, oh, I could go to college and I could do this. And it was also built off truth. There were people, of course, going to college. and there were people who were becoming doctors and who were becoming lawyers, and so that's important too. That is kind of the Black middle class was really building out during that period of time, and so I think it was a really important cultural iconic show for us during that period. Yeah.
And do you think, or would you agree that on the one hand, we had this show, and on the other hand, we had lots of people in the entertainment sector? Like, well, I don't want to name all of them, but we had singers, we had anchor people, and so on. So could we say we either had this show and then we had the entertainment sector, but in the middle, it was not that popular for Black American people to get those jobs like lawyer, doctors, and so on, teachers?
So I mean, I wouldn't know the statistics from that period of time, but I can tell you that I think African American success in entertainment has always been highly visual, right? Like, so we've seen the singers and we've seen the actors and we've seen the sports figures, and they're on one end of an extreme. Those are your celebrities, right? Those are your
Yes.
super successful in those ways. And we've put in our society, there's been a lot of investment in the Black community in those areas, right? So those are the places that we've been able to rise above discriminatory policies that kind of prevent people from achieving higher success in other, maybe more common white collar positions, for example. On the other end, the other thing you see is the other extreme is the images of Black folks were poor, were criminal, were drug during the 80s and 90s in particular, were drugs. And so you didn't see the people in the middle, and arguably still don't often see the people in the middle, right? Today you will see Beyonce and you will see Oprah and you will see the basketball players or the football, those folks. But you will also see poverty and you will also see crime. And those two things are also kind of the two pillars, I guess, that the media tends to portray. But the people in the middle are the ones who are pushing the standards, right? Who are achieving. So I would say that even during that period of time, Cosby Show and post Cosby Show, that African Americans were achieving, so that even today, Black women, for example, are the most educated demographic, right, in our country, and that comes out of the middle. That comes out of the middle, the working class and the middle class Black folks who are just doing what everybody wants to do, right? They're trying to better themselves and better their condition and get better education, and to achieve. And so I think the media is problematic in that way, but on the flip side, the portrayals of Black celebrities in entertainment, and that's been very, very helpful for a lot of Black folks who have achieved success in those arenas.
And to have kind of role models, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Role models who also many who give back to those programs, who give to, for example, public school programs and arts, right, in theater and music, and or who, give to their the communities from which they came in a variety of economic ways or of programmatic ways. Yeah, that's very, very, very important, especially as social change starts to shift away from investing in those communities through like government. And as that starts to shift, it's even more important that people who have achieved are giving back. Yeah.
And is there a difference between Black American people who were born in America and also the first and second generation were born there, and African American people, like, for example, coming from Nigeria? In preparation of our talk, I read that lots of course, Nigerian Americans are there, very successful and powerful. And is there a difference between those groups, and do they rival in a way?
Yeah. So here I can only speak to personal experience. I'm not an expert on this topic. Of course, in terms of immigration, immigrant populations to the country tend to be really successful, more successful in a lot of ways than our native-born American
Mhm,
populations.
mhm,
And I think that holds true also for immigrant groups from Africa. I can tell you that in my own experience, for example, going to college, that there was a divide between the African students who were here for studying
mhm.
and the Black American students. There was definitely a divide there. There's some cultural difference, right? We have very different culture. Skin tone does not determine
That's
uh,
it.
a shared experience always, and so I know that that was the case, back in the 90s when I was in college,
Mhm,
and I know as a educator that there is still cultural difference between families who have an immigrant story and those who are native born
mhm,
um, in in the classroom in terms of
mhm,
expectations and motivation and career aspiration. All those things are very different.
mhm,
I do believe there's tension between even the over the term African American in some cases, right?
mhm,
Because African Americans from Nigeria are actually, direct descendants of African immigrants who have come here and now, have become American, versus Black Americans
mhm,
who may not have any even kind of conscious connection to their ancestral roots.
mhm, mhm,
And so I know that there's been some tension over that term. There's some tension over what it means to be Black and American. This was maybe most recently evident here. There was some political concern over the Somali and
Yes.
Somali population in Minnesota, and so within again, generally broadly the Black community, there was some conversation about, well, are they Black? And within their community as well, it sounded like from what I read and saw. Am I a Black American or am I not a Black American? How do I own this identity to benefit politically, you know, or to blame politically
Mhm.
for something negative? And so I think that definitely exists, and that's because of cultural difference.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm,
because race
mhm,
does not always determine culture,
mhm,
especially in a
mhm,
country that is based on immigration and migration.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
You are an educator at the Arizona State University. Is there,
University of Wisconsin. Sorry,
is it?
University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. So you
Yeah,
were at the Arizona State
I,
University. Okay. And now you are at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Okay.
correct. Yeah,
Now we got that right.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
That's okay.
Is there something there as well that perhaps I'm not really aware of the situation, but that's why I want to ask. Is there something like a black person um, can easily or easier enter the university than a white person? I read something about that, also about Michelle Obama and so on. Perhaps you can tell me about that. Like a quota or something, I don't know.
No, there are no quotas. Probably what you're referring to is the discussions over affirmative action, which have been going on since the 1970s, and
Mhm.
the idea that what affirmative action means, which is basically that when all things are equal, in order to ensure that people who tend not to have opportunities, with all things being equal, that the person who tends not to have opportunities gets that opportunity.
Okay.
And that's in college, that has been used in college admissions as well, because college is um, one of the benefits of a college education is that you're entering a diverse population of people, right? So that you can diversify the educational experience and exposure. And so that has been a deliberate policy effort in the United States for several decades in order to ensure that folks, Black American, Brown American, Black and Brown folks generally have opportunities that they didn't have before, have access to education in particular.
Mhm.
So there is no record, there is no evidence that that means that Black people have an easier way
Mhm.
in than white people. But the argument against affirmative action or even against programs that privilege underrepresented populations has been that what it means is that unqualified people of color get access to things that they don't actually qualify for, and that is completely unfounded, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That is just a made up talking point.
Mhm.
And we see this because I think 2023, the Supreme Court eliminated affirmative action from college admissions. And so what that has meant is that, for example, at the elite institutions like Harvard University, they saw a drop immediately in the percentage of Black applicants that were admitted into their school. So it went from 18% to 14%, I think, in that first year. And my statistics might be off a little bit, but you can certainly look that up. And so what that means is that you've now limited the opportunity that Black folks have to access higher education at the elite level, right? And that's problematic.
Mhm.
If you're talking about having a society in which equality and equity are central. So there is no program like that. There are programs that have worked really hard to try to offer access to education and other kinds of opportunities to underrepresented populations, and those are under attack currently,
Mhm.
in particular, and going away. And there's going to be a detrimental effect on the ability of Black people, Black and brown people in particular, to access education like they could before. What we do know about education is it is the primary indicator of economic advancement, of generational wealth, of employment opportunity.
Mhm.
And so by limiting those channels to education, you're increasing the divide of racial inequality in this country in a
Mhm.
really deliberate way, and that's really problematic. So,
Mhm.
no, at the University of Wisconsin, I don't have off the top of my head the percentage of Black students, but it's very small
Okay.
at the University of Wisconsin, Madison, which is a very an elite institution of higher education
Mhm. Mhm.
as well. So I would like to see more opportunities for
Mhm.
Black and brown
Mhm.
folks
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
attend this institution.
You just used the term black and brown people. Here in
Mm.
Germany, we speak about the black people.
Uh-huh.
When you speak about brown people, where's the difference between black and brown people?
Yeah, so in this country, black tends to apply to African Americans generally, and I
Mhm.
use those terms interchangeably, Black American and African American, because
Mhm.
people identify themselves differently, and also, as we talked about earlier, not everybody who is in America and is Black considers themselves to be African American.
That's right.
A lot of Caribbean and Afro Latinos, and
That's it.
here
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
Brown folks in America, that term in academia anyway tends to be used more broadly for Latino, Hispanic folks, some Asian folks sometimes, and so it covers kind of a broader swath of racial
Okay. Mhm.
difference, yeah, racial
Mhm. Mhm.
minorities in this
Mhm.
country.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you for that.
yeah.
So, what would you consider as the daily challenges Black and brown people have in America nowadays?
hmm Um, so I'm not sure I can answer that question broadly. I can tell you, I think in my own experience, the challenges we have today are amplified. Um, I think just because of the politics of the period. I think daily the challenge is always how do you move in spaces in which you are a minority, in
Hmm.
which there are not many people who look like you. I'm sure this is very similar in Europe as well.
Hmm.
Um, and how do you navigate the increasing idea that you aren't qualified to be there in my case,
Hmm.
right? Because I am, educated. I have a PhD. I am a faculty member at an institution. And so I live in white spaces. And so I think the daily challenge is how you operate in those spaces on a daily basis and continue to be secure that you should be there, that you deserve to be there, that you earned your way, right? In an environment in which the assumption is you did not. I think that's one. I think more broadly, there is always the challenge in this country of how you move around stereotypes that people have for you, and you know, these can be stereotypes that have no real consequences, like, you know, maybe the person at the grocery store looks at you funny or says something inappropriate, things that may not have real consequences on your life, to getting pulled over, right, for a speeding ticket, and how you're going to operate in that moment. I think those things are really difficult on a daily basis, are challenges. But also, how do you stay true to your identity, and how do you maintain your mental, I don't want to say your mental health, but your ability mentally to overcome those things. And I think that's something that Black and brown people in this country deal with on a daily basis. I think it's part of our everyday existence, and it's so much so that most people don't even realize they're doing it until it becomes kind of overwhelming, until there's a breaking point. So I think those are some of the issues.
Would you say, from what you have experienced and the people around your daily life, was life easier and better with the President Barack Obama? Can you answer that?
So I can say that the feeling in the country was different, and it felt, for me, more hopeful and safer. Absolutely. It, in hindsight, there's a lot of people who are critical of President Obama's presidency. The argument is he didn't do enough for Black people during that time. He wasn't assertive enough. And we see now what happens when a president does come in and just says, do all these things, forget the laws, right? I would argue that President Obama would not have been able to do that because of who he was if he tried, right? That would have been a recipe for disaster. But I remember, I'm old enough to remember his actual campaign in 2008 and his inauguration, and the feeling of hope and pride that came along with that moment, and that for me never wavered. He, for me, was that Cosby Show in real life, right? Like, I've never seen a Black president. I've never seen a Black first lady. Look at this family, and they are incredible, right? They are educated, they are lawyers, they are kind, they are all of these things. And for 8 years, there were efforts to try to find something negative about them, and it never done, right? And they continue to handle themselves with such grace and such thoughtfulness. They were critical thinkers, right? And in my view, they handled the presidency in a really critically thought out way. So for me, in my life, I felt much better and much more hopeful about my opportunities and the policies that they passed. For me, I was also a fan of. So, not everybody in the Black community was, but I saw, my PhD was started on a diversity fellowship, right? And so today that wouldn't have been the case. I wouldn't have gotten a PhD today because that diversity fellowship wouldn't have been offered. Those kinds of things happen very much under the Obama administration, and I felt that. So I felt like there was an opportunity to succeed for myself, to succeed for my family members, in a way that I hadn't felt before, in a way that I certainly don't feel right now.
So when we think of hope or of something that you would wish, I don't want to go too deep into the politics, but you spoke about hope. What would give you hope nowadays? What should come back?
What should come back?
But because you said you felt hopeful, you had a hopeful life those days, and it changed now. Yeah, what is the thing that you would love to come back?
So I felt before, it felt to me like the country was moving in the right direction in the sense of acceptance, the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the idea
Mhm.
of inclusion and belonging. Those
Mhm.
are good things in my view. Like I think it's good for us to understand people who are different, for us to meet and eat and hear and practice things that are foreign to us so that we understand other people's experiences. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
I think it makes sense that if somebody is in a wheelchair, that we require that there's a way for them to get into a building.
exactly.
Right?
Mhm.
Like to me, that just makes sense as a person living in a community. I want everyone to be successful, and I want people to want me to be
Mhm.
successful.
Mhm.
And that's how I felt that the politics of that time period felt to me like everything was being done to try to make the idea that people are good and belong here like acceptable. Um, so I want that to come back because what it feels like now is that that the focus is on dividing people out between
Mhm.
who should be here and who shouldn't be here, between
Mhm.
who should be accepted and who shouldn't be accepted. And that is not how a society works
Mhm. Mhm.
effectively.
Mhm.
Not in a democracy. That's not how it's supposed to work. And our democracy is super flawed and it is a work in progress. Um, and it's always been historically two steps forward, one step back, or one step
Mhm.
forward and two steps back. And I'm very, very clear on that. But we're going way back right
Mhm.
now in the way
Mhm.
that we're creating systems or reviving systems or re-empowering systems that seek division and inequality
Mhm.
and exclusion. And that doesn't feel comfortable to me. So
Mhm.
I want to be around people who accept me, who are empathetic to other people's situations, and who believe fundamentally that people are good. And I
Mhm.
do think that the Obama administration, or at least what President Obama how he spoke to the nation, he came with this fundamental idea that people are good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if you come with that, you have a really different outlook than if you
Mhm.
come believing that people are bad.
Yes.
Right?
Mhm.
And I feel like right now the assumption is people are bad. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and so that's what I would want
Mhm.
back.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I would want back. Yeah.
And have you also got the feeling that it's not only that white people are against brown and black people, but also people who might be like successful, they don't want their success to fade away because of immigrants, so
Yeah.
they would like the immigrants to go. Is that also something that you experience in America?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think class is a big
Class,
deal
yes, that's it.
here right now. And I think class division is our wealth gap is widening, our middle class is shrinking, our lower class is growing. All of these things are problematic.
Mhm.
And yeah, I have um, perhaps I'm naive, but I have never felt such power from the um, upper class, from the elite, as they have now in terms of my life. I haven't
Mhm.
felt that before, and I don't like it.
Mhm.
And it also feels I've never felt not to say it hasn't always been there, but I haven't felt it personally, the relationship, the corruption between money and politics in terms of people who are not politicians being billionaires and bringing I totally understand this has always been the case,
Yeah.
right? But it's
Mhm.
in the open in a way that I can't believe that I'm talking on an iPhone, right? Owned by a person who's giving money to pass policies against me,
Yeah.
right? And I that is a really surreal feeling.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the division is at class is a huge deal. Race is a convenient divider because it's visible,
That's it.
right? Yeah, and we because we're built on a country that comes out of racism in many ways. It's a really easy one also to revert to divide people and to re-stereotype people in ways that I thought that we were trying to overcome.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm. So my last question is a very personal question. What gives you hope?
yeah. Um, so I think that. I'm going to speak for generally about Black people here, are so resilient. And so it gives me hope I, because I know the history of Black people in this country, and that history is a hard one. Um, but because of that history, there's also this very promising history of resilience, of overcoming, of faith and opportunity and community. And I think those things are still here,
Mhm.
right? So, if I go to my cousin's barber shop and I sit in there and chat with all the folks coming in there to get their hair cut or whatever, and their kids getting their hair cut, I love those conversations. I love hearing the pride that they have in each other, in their children's small successes, in their family members' lives. I love it in the ways that the community is sticking together. I would say that this moment in particular offers opportunity for to strengthen community relations in a way that I don't think the people who are trying to divide understand, right? That this is actually some of the responses you're making folks stronger on the ground because they're digging into each other. And I love that. And so that gives me hope. My students give me hope. They are incredible, and they are thoughtful, and they are very much internalizing everything that's going on and trying to be better people. Like, I see this in their choices and the things that they're frustrated by and that scare them. They're trying really hard to figure out how they can navigate this in a way that they make the world better. They give me a lot of hope. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So today is a day of hope. It's Easter Sunday. And I'm really happy that we could have this conversation today on Easter Sunday, talking about hope, talking about what hopefully comes in the future. And I wish you all the best. I really appreciate your time. I wish you all the best. And I do hope that in some weeks we will meet in person here in Germany, and then we can just continue our chat.
That would be great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you too. So have a lovely Sunday. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.